Thank you, Antonia. Good to have everyone back for Module 6 in our Foundations in Juvenile Healing and Wellness Court Coordination. Today, we're going to be talking about lessons learned in developing a Juvenile Healing and Wellness Court with some special guests. This module is kind of to build upon yesterday's Module 4. And our goal here is to get more specific in terms of topics of discussion, court operations, whereas Module 4's was more overview, getting Healing and Wellness Court started. This one is going to focus on once things are in operation, what are the sort of things we're looking to do, what are the sort of things we're looking to accomplish. And we've got some great guests, Dave and Chaniel. We can move on to the next slide, Antonio. Actually, you can move ahead 2 slides since we already did the disclaimer. We've got Dave and Chaniel again coming back, and then a new guest, Julio de los Santos from Quapaw Nation in Oklahoma. And we're excited to have them and get their insight again. And we'll do brief introductions just for those who may not have been with us for Module 4, or those who are watching these recorded modules. So we'll start from left to right with Dave. Dave, you want to give a brief introduction of yourself, and then we'll go to Chaniel and then Julio.
My name is David McArthur. I work with the White Earth Nation. I'm program manager for our Juvenile Healing and Wellness Court Circle Back program in our Oshki Monadoo Youth Adolescent Inpatient Treatment Center.
Thank you, Dave.
Hello, everyone. I'm Chaniel Grant. I'm the coordinator for the Blackfeet Nation's Juvenile and Adult Healing and Wellness Court projects. And I'm the peer mentor for Tribal Youth Resource Center.
Thank you, Chaniel.
Hello, I'm Julio de los Santos. I work for the Quapaw Nation. I am the Youth Court Coordinator and the Juvenile Affairs Case Manager.
Thank you, Julio. Good to see you guys today. Appreciate your willingness to entertain our questions once again. We can go ahead to the next slide, Antonia. So our discussion today, we're going to talk about different perspectives from experienced Juvenile Healing and Wellness Court staff, and then program success stories and creative approaches to support tribal youth, and then advice related to program sustainability. Towards the end of our conversation, we're going to touch on building upon current efforts, and then looking beyond, as Dave put it, a one and done program, and trying to make something that's expandable within the community and starts to bring in different departments and create relationships with other programs within and beyond the community as well. And then considerations for the future. Any advice from Dave, Chaniel, and Julio on what their efforts pertain to in terms of starting to plan initial plans, and then planning during the operation of the court, and everything that goes into trying to balance all the responsibilities of being a Juvenile Healing and Wellness Court coordinator. So we can go on to the next slide, Antonio. And this one is actually, we're going to dedicate this slide to Julio, since Julio was unable to, or was not present yesterday to give us a little bit about information about himself and his background in the Juvenile Healing and Wellness Court at Quapaw. So Julio, the floor is yours if you want to let us know, the type of work you're doing within the community, maybe a little bit of background about your work experience and where your court is now. Julio, I think you're currently muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm Julio de los Santos. I work for the Quapaw Nation in Miami, Oklahoma. I was already a employee of the tribe prior to going into the Juvenile Healing to Wellness grant coordinator position, but I worked in the gaming sector of the tribe. Basically, how I heard of the job was I was tired of commuting. Our primary casino was about 40 minutes away from my home, and the court was just a 5-minute drive from my home. So they suggested, thought I'd be a good fit for this role. So I applied for it. Now I've been here for a year. So that's how I came into the court. But yeah, it's been great. When I started, the grant was not fully implemented yet. So I was able to work with my court administrator to basically set up the grant from the ground up, and with Anna, of course. So that was beneficial, basically, to know how everything is set up. Primary adjustments that have had to make working with youth. I think just understanding that there is some level of trauma in every story that there is, and being sympathetic and empathetic to the youth, to their families, and trying to set up ISPs or individual service plans that benefit everyone, not one that punishes more, one that is lenient, just ones that work individually with each family.
Thank you, Julio. And hopefully you don't have to walk to work during those Oklahoma summers. But I did want to ask and congratulations on your new position within the community. I did want to ask what the learning curve was like, because we do get a lot of coordinators who may, shift areas of expertise or shift positions within the community and find themselves in a healing and wellness court and having these new responsibilities. Can you talk about the learning curve, when you started, and your level of comfort now that you have that knowledge and working with Anna and your TA providers?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was a shift in career. I mean, you're going from working at a gaming facility that has over 2,000 slot machines, you see thousands of people every day, to now you're in an office, not walking around with people you'll probably never see again. It was definitely a transition. However, I was fortunate enough that when my position was created for me to apply for, I was also a deputy court clerk. So working side by side with the court clerk at the time, who has since moved up to the court administrator, was very beneficial. It was just us two. We were a small court at the time. So we worked side by side. She was very instrumental in me learning the ins and outs of the court. And with what I learned, and with what I learned with our grant TAs, I was able to basically put this together. It was a process, and it was a process that we didn't want to rush, because we wanted to make sure that we were covering our bases and trying to think of everything imaginable. And as we were planning, we actually had our McGirt ruling that affected many tribes in Oklahoma. Ours was Lawhorn, and that came down in October, towards the end of October. So with that being implemented, we have gained now this new jurisdiction. Our boundaries were reaffirmed. Our reservation was reaffirmed again. So we collaborated with our business committee, which is our tribal council, and our chairman and our marshal service, to try to just implement stuff that we could all work together with, and that it would work smoothly with.
Thank you for providing that information. I imagine it must have been a little stressful there when that McGirt ruling came down, and not really knowing what the effect it would have. And considering, your unique position in Oklahoma and having that decision come down, have you seen the effects of that yet?
We have seen an increase in adult criminal cases. We are starting to see an increase in juvenile cases as the school year is starting. Towards the beginning of the year, we met with our local schools, let them know what our plans were, what we were trying to do. And I think now that the school year has begun, they are starting to utilize our services a little bit more and feel more comfortable reaching out to us. But yes, for sure, we had to increase staff. Like I said, it was just the two of us. We hired the court clerk at the time was promoted to a court administrator. We hired a full-time prosecutor, a full-time public defender. We have 3 contract judges and a new court clerk, and then I moved into the juvenile affairs position. So yeah, we did have to increase our staff because we did see an influx of cases.
Okay, and I guess we'll start, you can see the questions here about case management. We'll start with you, Julio, and then we'll ask Dave and Chaniel about what your case management process looks like. And as I stated earlier, yesterday, we kind of just did a little bit of overview about theories on juvenile healing and wellness courts and their impact within the community. Let's talk a little bit about details. If you could share with our participants what Quapaw's case management process looks like and how it was developed.
Sure. So we started basically once we had a full-time prosecutor, we sat down with him almost immediately on his first week, let them know what we were trying to do with our juvenile side of stuff, and we let them know that we are close to implementing a juvenile healing to wellness court. When we receive a case, usually if it's referred from the school or from our marshal service or any other referral area, we will staff it. I will review the situation. I'll staff it with the prosecutor, the court administrator, a judge if it's that severe, the marshals if they are involved. And basically, we have our youth services has a free counselor on site, so we will staff it with them as well if we see that it is necessary. So we staff the case. Our prosecutor will divert it to me if he feels that is a case that needs to be diverted. We will implement the juvenile healing to wellness court policy and procedure, which is basically the parents come in, they fill out an app, and we call it like an application, but it's the intake. Give us all the information that we need. We set them up basically on a probation type of program where they check in, do drug testing if it's required. Each plan is individual to each person. So yeah, we set up with our prosecutor mainly, and the prosecutor will check in with me, see how things are going. I will have periodic conferences with the judges if necessary. I go into courts if we are proceeding with filing a petition with the juvenile and their family, and kind of be their advocate on how things need to be going, if there's improvement, if there's not improvement, and basically give my suggestion.
That's great. Sounds like you could even add, a prosecutor to your resume at this point, Julio, because it seems like you take on that responsibility of being the voice for the tribe and the nation in the healing to wellness court. And I think it's important to get that prosecutorial input, because I know some communities have difficulty getting the attorneys involved in this process. So to have that direct communication, I think the timing sounded like it matched up beautifully, to have a new prosecutor and then introduce them to something they might not have been familiar with. We'll move on with Dave. Dave, can you talk about your case management process, your experience kind of building this process up, and then also the individuals, as Julio indicated, who are part of a case from beginning to end?
Yeah, our case management process, we have to work with 3 counties within our reservation because we're a public law 280 state. So we have Clearwater County, Monoman County, and Becker County. And we have to work with their county attorneys, probation officers, law enforcement, plus tribal. One thing that we do is that once the referral comes in, once the prosecutor and the different prosecutors or probation decide to make that referral, they send it to our case manager, who shares it with our team. Our team puts it all to a vote if we're able to accept the individual, depending on their mental health, substance abuse, severity of their crimes, stuff like that. And then once that decision's made, then our case manager becomes the driving force. They're the ones that are out. They I guess you can kind of say they take over that probation role and get out after the kid, check the kid, make sure that he's doing the things that he needs to do, doing the intake process, getting the kids signed into the programs and doing all that. What's kind of unique here is working with all the different entities and agencies. When we first started our wellness court, we set up a 10-minute presentation. PowerPoint that we took around, and we went to the county attorney's, probation, even the district court judges, and got on their dockets, and we showed them what our plans were. What we did a little 10-minute presentation, guaranteed them that we would be here for long term. Wasn't going to be a short-term fix. It was going to be something that we were going to try to keep moving forward, and got their buy-in. And then it was just the process of starting to build that relationship of supporting the state and getting that joint respect back from the state to support us. So yeah, it turned out to be a pretty crazy process. Our case managers, they're our driving force, though. They're the ones that keep the information flowing. They're the ones that we have empowered to do that immediate discipline when needed, or immediate sanctions and things like that. So.
Thank you, Dave. And what we're seeing, just to follow up, is, you know, a varying level of caseload per Healing to Wellness Court. Can you talk about your court's caseload, if it got bigger over time, and kind of managing multiple cases, you know, at once, and, you know, the team effort that goes into doing that?
Well, when we first started the program, like I said, it was myself. We put a planning team together, which really consisted of myself and Merlin Deegan, who was our spiritual person at the time. And we went out and started the planning portion of it, doing those presentations and everything like that. Once that got taken care of, can you ask me that question one more time? Because I just lost my train of thought.
That's all right. Just the level of caseload, because we've got, you know, courts who have 1 or 2 cases, 1 or 2 participants in their program. And then we've got some who've got double-digit participants in their program.
Yep. And in I'd say the first 6 months, we had 23 kids in our program, and I was the only case manager at the time. So it takes a lot of planning, thinking about time management, how you're going to be able to give that same amount of time to everyone. And it's kind of a rough process, because you got to be pretty devoted to your program. I spent a lot of time working in the evenings, spent a lot of times working during the days, because I had to be there to do the meetings, do all these different things for the administration level of stuff, and then plus run around half the night chasing kids, and then be back into work at 8 o'clock in the morning when I probably got home at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, you know, from doing different checks and following up with kids being out and running around. So a lot of it is kind of like time management. You gotta figure out your days and how not to let this job like completely consume you too. Then there's going to be times that you might only have 4 or 5 kids in the program. We went through COVID. It was pretty wicked. We kind of got shut down over COVID. We lost a lot of people. We came back with probably a quarter of the staff that we had before, and they still wanted us to meet the same expectations or the same amount of numbers that we had in the past, right? So then we have, you know, case managers that are helping keeping up with grants, helping chase the kids around, helping do the court stuff, helping do an outreach to the schools bi-weekly. There's this, it's just gets so overwhelming sometimes. And I think with our staff, or with my staff that I have doing that work now, is that I know I was there at one time. I know what it's like. So I've been able to give them a little bit of time off, you know, have them, you know, be able to figure out how they can manage their time effectively. And it can be a pretty rough process. But the thing is, there's a lot of success that comes from you and your devotion to the job too, right? We have a lot of kids that are reaching out now through the internet, through different things to talk with case managers. Some of our case managers get messaged at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning because of a crisis. They're getting messaged because the kid thinks that they might go use or might have this going on, or there's something going on in the home. And these guys have been dedicated to where they answer those calls and they respond to those calls or text messages. So yeah, the process can be quite how could I put that, demanding. But you have to figure out what you can do to get that time for yourself and be able to provide those services to each individual and treat them equally and all that too, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. And we talked earlier in the module with Aaron about incentives. And when you have a caseload of 23, that's honestly, that's the most I've ever heard of caseload simultaneous is 23 at once. And then having to give that amount of time and energy for each one, you know, making that healing and wellness court experience unique for the individuals. Can you talk a little bit about if that was motivation to kind of get participants to graduate and not have to see them again through your program and maybe reduce the numbers?
Group activities is the answer. When you start dealing with a high number of kids, you got to figure out what you can do as a group activity, right? Some of the things that we did was we started introducing our sweat lodges, different ceremonies. We took the kids out in the woods, you know, to help them learn how to hunt, fish, and gather. We did a lot of things as a group and kind of brought that process of healing together instead of individually. And I think that also gave some of the kids a chance to be able to relate with someone else that's going through that process. And then also a long-term goal or a long-term friend or buddy or however you want to say it, to kind of relate with if things start getting tough. They know they have someone they could reach out to that could help them get back on track again, other than their case managers. So that's a lot of the things that we did when we started implementing group activities, sober nights. We'd have our Fridays or Saturdays. And we started out Fridays and Saturdays, but my crew was getting pretty wore out. So we dropped it to one Friday a week where we had just a sober activity. It didn't have to be cultural. It didn't have to be anything. It could be anything from going to Sky Zone in Fargo, going to Minnesota Twins games, to movie nights. Some of the nights that we had for like movie nights, we put up this great big screen and projector, and we allowed the kids to bring in friends and family and little brothers and sisters, and we'd go out and pick them all up and bring them all in our nice little vans and stuff like that. And sometimes they didn't even watch the movie. They just laid down on the floor and went to sleep. And it was probably maybe one of the only times that they were able to just relax and just go to sleep, because they didn't have to worry about chasing their little brother around and watching them. They didn't have to worry about, you know, people acting up in the household. They didn't have to worry about that stuff. They could just come and just relax. And when they relaxed, they just went to sleep, you know? So I think a lot of the ideas of being able to handle a higher caseload is, you know, think about group activities, think about things that you can pull everybody together and do certain things with, you know, and that will even give them a bonding experience with those others, and hopefully the supports in the future from that person too, or, you know, to help them stay going on the right path.
That's great advice, Dave. You know, trying to use what you have, especially with such a large caseload. Chaniel, I know you talked in module 4 about building relationships among your team, among your coworkers, the staff. And Dave, you know, touched on the stresses that go along with being case managers and coordinators. Sometimes the job can be 24/7. Can you talk about the training, any specific trainings that, you know, you encourage your staff or your colleagues to go to kind of handle that stress, or the expectations of, you know, what's going to come with the job?
Yeah, I think for us, the best thing I could probably encourage teams to do is to go on a site visit to another court that's operational, and just seeing that, you know, the process in action, that really helped us kind of see what it took. We visited a couple of different courts, and just seeing how different they were, and you know, I guess kind of how diverse they are, kind of helped us understand, you know, this is you know, we can develop this to fit us, but we can also go, observe these courts and kind of take something from what they're doing. And but I think just letting them see that in action was really helpful. And then also the enhancement training is really it's a really good training. You learn a lot about specifically tribal healing to wellness court topics. So those two trainings I think are really those two different things are important for teams to attend.
Thank you, Chaniel, and appreciate.
One more thing.
Go ahead.
Overview. We also did like the overview training with TLPI. So they came to our community, kind of helped us, did some TA with us, but they really helped us in the beginning, I guess, plan, did the community mapping, that kind of stuff. So it was almost like a little mini strategic planning that, and you can request that through your TA to your people.
Thank you, Chaniel. I promise that is not sponsored content. That was organic advertising from Chaniel. So we appreciate it. Julio, I think the benefit of having you a part of our discussion today is, your perspective is a little bit more fresh. I imagine the casino pace was, as you stated, a little bit, high pace. So maybe it was a good transition to go in terms of what the expectations would be as a coordinator. Can you talk about any suggested trainings you would have for people who are just getting started with their responsibilities within the court?
Sure. Yeah. There is, like you said, quite a bit of a difference going from a faster paced environment to the role of a youth court coordinator. A lot of the trainings that I attended were actually hosted by TLPI or at least sent to me by Anna. So those are the trainings that I attended towards the beginning. Towards the beginning of the year, I did attend trainings with the other 5 civilized tribes here in Oklahoma who had also had their rulings already ruled on. And so I attended trainings with them just here locally in Oklahoma also. But yeah, the trainings that Anna had sent me and that my court administrator would send me, those were very beneficial to me. The books for the Juvenile Healing to Wellness, how to create a youth court, that was very beneficial also. So just a collaboration of trainings for me is what really helped. And I'm a hands-on learner, so just putting this together hands-on was quite a bit of a training for me as well.
Thank you, Julio. Sounds like you hit the ground running there in Quapaw, so congratulations. If we can move on to the next slide, I think we're going to talk about the team dynamic. Or actually, yeah, there we go. Thank you, Antonia. So I kind of wanted to discuss, one of the themes of our module so far has been, removing ourselves from that adversarial approach of the trial court and creating a non-adversarial environment, not only for the participants, but also for staff members, for court personnel, and even the judge sometimes. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about, the role of the coordinator. And I know Chaniel talked about this in module 4. Maybe we'll hear from Dave. That communication with the judge and communication with the attorneys who kind of have that adversarial mindset, and explaining to them that this approach is different. And also when things kind of do take on that adversarial role, it is kind of hard to avoid any sorts of dynamics of power, altogether with the judge being the ultimate decision maker. How do you deal with knowing, although you're giving recommendations based on your experience, sometimes cultural experience, professional experience, and maybe the court or the team goes a different direction?
Well, I think we addressed it right from the beginning when we went out and did our little presentation and everything. We let everybody know that we were going to put a team together of mental health workers, substance abuse, Indian child welfare, law enforcement from the 3 counties, tribal law enforcement, and our tribal court system and our state court system. We just let them all know that when we were putting this team together, that we all have equal say, right? We were going to make our decisions off in everybody's input. So if mental health, let's say we had a kid that was acting up in mental health, had an idea of how to treat that or how to help that, or if they thought that if the kid came in and the judge started pointing their finger and said, you're going to go to jail if this happens again, how that kid could be oppositional, defiant, and just do it, just cause that controversy. We really trained hard. We took our team, we had them go through mental health training, crisis intervention training type stuff, talking about coping skills, talking about these types of things like oppositional defiant, alcohol, FASD, drug addicted, all that kind of stuff. We went through a lot of training together. And I think it's the push of them case managers and your coordinator to make sure that they keep that goal, or they keep that idea of that team together, you know? So when someone starts to push, if the judge starts to push and says, this is my courtroom and this is what I'm going to do and blah, 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 not to be scared to say, hey, judge, you know, we need to have a little sidebar because this isn't the way that this is developed. This is our goals. Here's our policies, our procedures. Here are different things and how we're going to work at this as a team, right? And reiterate that to them and say, hey, you know, this is what we need to do. This is what you signed on for. This is how things need to go. That can be a pretty scary deal, especially when you're walking in, and you know how it is when you go into a courtroom, the judge is like way up here and you're like way down here. And you're just like, oh, you know, I don't know if he'll hold me in contempt and throw me in jail or what he's going to do. But you got to do what you got to do, you know, in order to keep that team atmosphere going and keep things going for the best interest of your clients. Same way with working with all the different counties. I've had county attorneys come in and say, we're going to pull, actually a probation officer. We were handling a case and the probation officer said, nope, this is the way it's going to go. And if you don't do it, I'm not going to refer any more kids into your program. I was like, wait a second here. It's not your show. It's everybody's show. Everybody has their input. And this was a decision that was made. And I took it to the next level where I had to file a complaint with their boss and move it forward. You know what I mean? You got to do what you need to do to keep that team together, keep them unified, and support each other, learn from each other, learn from your mental health people, learn from your SED people. I'm not an expert in that. I'm not an expert in mental health. I've learned a lot about mental health by listening to the mental health workers talk. And I don't try to trump them or don't try to say, hey, this is what's going to happen. I listen to what they have to say. If I disagree with it, I give my 2 cents. But as a team, if they sided with the mental health person, that's what we do. We hand out that sanction or whatever, the way the mental health person was suggesting it's done. Same way at SUD, same way from Indian child welfare. Indian child welfare steps in and says, hey, this is a mandatory report. You guys need to do this. You need to do that. Then we need to do it. And if we have to go talk to the kid and say, hey, you know, as a professional, I'm here to support you and I'm here to listen to you. I'm here to do this for you, but I'm also here to keep you safe. And the stuff that's happening to you is not good. And we need to move forward with it. You know, it's just being that open, honest, learning from each other, respecting each other, doing things in a good way. No, it's my way. It's my show. It's like, hey, you know, we need to talk about this. Here's the policies and procedures. This is what we're doing. You know, just fall back on those policies and procedures and just keep things moving in a good way.
Thank you, Dave. And I appreciate the Minnesota the Kid accent. It gives me Purple Rain vibes for anyone who knows what I'm talking about. But Chaniel, well, if you want to maybe touch on that power dynamic. I know as a former prosecutor, sometimes it's fun, and it sounds like Dave is saying that adversarial mentality may be necessary in certain circumstances, despite our teachings of non-adversarial, treating everyone with respect. Sometimes you might need to step up and kind of assert yourself, on the behalf of the youth. Can you talk about some instances where you've had to do that, kind of step out of your own realm and do what you need to do, fight on behalf of your participants?
Yeah, I think so in the beginning, well, even now, I think with the school system, I had to kind of step in and learn that whole 504 individualized education plan realm, that, there are certain, behavioral health disorders or mental health disorders that do require that, those accommodations for these kids. So I know, like, for me, we've had to go with the parents to the school, and we actually discovered the participant had ADHD while they were in the program. They were evaluated. So they went through these years and years of school without receiving any accommodations to help them overcome those barriers that come with ADHD. So we had to go advocate for that kid in the school, or that participant, and kind of empower the parent to, that we're here to support you, but we need you to step up and really advocate for your child to get these services. So it was something we did as a team, going and meeting with the school and making sure that 504 was in place for that child to succeed in school. So that was really like a weird role change, I guess, is going and kind of being an advocate and fighting for the, there's a need here, we got to help them meet it by going and holding the school system accountable that they're getting that done. So that's what I love about these kinds of programs is, it's a model to hold each other accountable. You're really able to hold each other accountable through, your frequent staffings and just meeting on the needs of each kid. So you'll discover, even with the parents, working with the parents, what the needs are. So that was one of those examples.
Thank you, Chaniel. And I guess we'll get into the more nitty-gritty details here and specific participants, and what your guys' intake and assessment process looks like. So how'd you guys determine your criteria going into creating your case management process? What were your considerations, from the intake to the assessment to the orientation? What did you look to as a way to kind of determine who's would be a good participant or eligible youth? And then also, we get a lot of feedback from grantees about youth sometimes taking the trial court route instead of the juvenile healing and wellness court route, because the juvenile healing and wellness court is more strenuous. They'd rather pay the fine or maybe do the couple of days in jail if it's substance abuse related or possession related. Can you talk a little bit about convincing individuals who may benefit more from the healing and wellness court, who are on the fence about whether or not to participate? And we'll start with Julio.
So convincing, I really haven't had to convince participants to join Healing to Wellness. Sometimes the biggest headache for me are the parents not wanting to participate in being involved. But generally, for the most part, our judges will try to offer the program and be like, we have this program, you can either choose to do it or not. And Generally, the way the judge lectures it to them is enough for them to be like, all right, I'll go ahead and sign up for the program. Now you do have parents who are very supportive of it and want to get their kid off of whatever drug or alcohol abuse they may be using. But yeah, I haven't ran into the issue yet of having to convince my participants to stay in the program or to enroll into the program.
With your program being relatively new, Julio, what sort of marketing efforts have you guys done to get the word out about Healing to Wellness Court? Is it mostly just, word of mouth happening when people get into the justice system?
So in terms of marketing, we did go ahead and meet with all these school administrators. So we have 2 school districts in our reservation, in their full K through 12 schools. So we set up meetings with the administrators. We presented to them what the plan was, what the goal is, and how to submit a referral to us, how to contact us, who to contact, and basically set up that line of communication. Even if they wanted to talk about someone that wasn't eligible for juvenile healing to wellness, we still left that line of communication open with them. And the administrators at the school seem to advertise for us when there is an issue, because the people at school see it firsthand. They're the ones that see the students every day. We do see a decline in referrals over the summer, and we assume it's because kids aren't in school. Our primary referral is our school districts and our marshal service, because our marshal services also serves as our school resource officers. So yeah, it's really been word of mouth. However, we do go out and let people know that we have this program available. Now we do have some that make it to the prosecutor's desk prior to being referred to me, but even then I have a close enough relationship with our prosecutor that he will usually come talk to me, staff it with me, and see if this is a case that can be diverted either just through our juvenile affairs office or through juvenile healing to wellness. So we have a good relationship on that front as well to try to keep kids out of the juvenile justice system.
And Chaniel, you heard Julio talk about the school system and kind of making them a target audience for services provided. And then can you expand on your relationship with the school and maybe some marketing you've had to do within the community initially to get the word out? I know Blackfeet's got a really good reputation, not just within the community, but across the country in terms of your services.
Yeah, I think in the beginning, we really, we had to go do a lot of community outreach events, and then actually going to the schools and just meeting with the administrators, and then, getting their feedback on who is a good player to add to the team. We did a lot of outreach with the different school systems. So there's multiple buildings. So there's different administrators in different buildings. So just gathering all of them up, and then also meeting with our school board to kind of, present the program, and then what our partnership would look like. And then from there, we kind of went into the more formal MOUs, forming an MOU with the school district and the superintendent. So from there, it kind of took off, I think, but really it was just kind of going out and getting that awareness out there, and getting the school's feedback on what their needs were from the court system. So I think that in the beginning, if you just go and you meet with them and you offer, ask them what do you need from us, that kind of reciprocal thing, that really helps. So we found in the beginning that they were having a hard time with absences. What do you call that? There's a word for that. They were having a lot of, what's that?
Truancy.
Yeah, truancy. Truancy court wasn't working the way they wanted it to. So a lot of the truancy stuff was able to be worked out with the MOU. We told them, we have the process to kind of use the court's leverage to hold them accountable to get to school. So or the leverage of the court to kind of help the school back to school up on that aspect. So just, showing them how we can help too. That was really helpful in the beginning.
Yeah, and that truancy issue is something a lot of our grantees look at, as an opportunity basically to get participants who could benefit from the services of the Healing and Wellness Court. But I think, as you touched on, Chaniel, that consistent communication is critical. We've also seen, instances where courts and grantees will get a stack of 50 potential participants at once, trying to rekindle that relationship between the school system, and then turns out, we've got a lot of work to do. So I just think having that consistent communication will pay off in the long run in terms of workload. Dave, if you want to talk about, obviously the difference between the trial court is and the Healing and Wellness Court is the choice to have our participants, want to be a part of it. Can you talk about, gaining that trust with the youth to convince them, or maybe, have them look at the Healing and Wellness Court in a good light as opposed to the route of the trial court?
I think, some of the issues that we had when we started is that I think every wellness court is going to have that, is the kids are gonna defy. They want to go somewhere where they're not going to be monitored as much. They're not going to want, families are the same way. The families really don't want you in their house. They don't want you there every day and watching and checking and seeing what's going on. The one thing that our court, majority of our court participants come from criminal court. So when they are going to get referred into our program, there's a court order that says that they must comply and they must go through everything that we offer. So if it's assessments, drug and alcohol assessments, mental health diagnostic assessments, anything that we do in our intake, they have to complete. If they don't complete, then they could look at going back and being charged for the crime that they committed. We've had kids from first degree assault, first degree arson, all the way down to, petty misdemeanor marijuana possession come through our program. When the kids actually get to the program, they're, like I said, they think it's just kind of, they can show up and do what they want and not follow through. And it's a lot of buy-in. You got to get a lot of buy-in and let them know that we're not there to have them go back into the justice system, but we're here to try to figure out why they're here, what we can do to stop it from happening in the future, and let them know that it's okay to go through these SUD assessments, mental health assessments, and also our cultural intake assessment, which we have there to see where their knowledge is and understanding of the culture. Once they come into the program and they see that we're there to try to help and assist, instead of try to, how could I put it, lock them up, they start kind of having a little bit of buy-in. It's a tough road to walk. It really is, because your families, so a lot of our families aren't healthy. They're not willing to change. They're not willing to make that change for their kids. And it's tough to get that buy-in from those families. And it's tough to get the buy-in from the kid that's growing up in a family like that, But I think once they start seeing that we're doing things for them in support of them, providing services to help them, instead of, like I talked about earlier, about making a mandatory report to ICW, right? You got to sit down and talk with both the family and the child, depending on the situation. If it's a molestation or something like that, yeah, you don't go talk to the family about it, you make the report. But if it's something to do with chemical use in the household or something like that, you're able to sit down and say, hey, I have to make this report. It ain't because I want to, but I have to, you know, it's mandated, and I have to do this in order to try to help heal that individual, right? So I think a lot of times it's just being open, honest. And yeah, in a perfect world, they're not going to scream and holler at you and tell you that you're, you know, call you every name in the book and tell you to get out of their house or whatever. In a perfect world, they won't do that, and it's going to happen. But I think after the after they settle down and they realize that you gave enough respect to be able to come in and talk to them about it, then they start having a little bit more buy-in. So I think that's just the main thing, is just doing things in a good way, being open and honest to the best, as honest as you can be, and let them know that we're here to help them. We don't want you to go into Northwest Juvenile Center. We don't want you to end up spending your life in the criminal justice system. That's why we're here, and we're looking at giving you a positive path. And this is the way that you can go and have positive things happen. And then if you go this way, there's going to be consequences, and these are your consequences, and letting them know what they are ahead of time, you know? So I don't know if that makes sense, but you know, that's just mainly what it is just, if you want buy-in, these youth know if you're, pardon my, I shouldn't say that word, but they know if you're lying to them, or if you're telling them a bunch of fictitious stuff, right? They know that. They spend their whole life since they're little bitty guys learning street knowledge of hey, this guy's not telling me the truth. I got to watch out for this one. I got to watch out for this. They can read people. They can read people so well. So the best thing to do is just be honest, be open, and they'll buy in. They'll start respecting you. And once they start respecting you and you follow through with what you say, if you tell them this is going to happen, if you do this, and it's a negative, like discipline, you need to follow through with it. If you're going to do this, this is the positive, you need to follow through with it. You can't bend or break too much. I understand there's times that you got to kind of be a little flexible, but you also have to still make sure that there's some sort of discipline or something there, and they'll start to, or some sort of praise for what they did, and they'll start buying into what you have to offer.
Thank you, Dave. We got a comment from Peggy. To help their youth in the tribe, they have a van and picks up kids that miss bus and brings them to school. But they can only use that option once or twice a week, so it doesn't become a constant for those youth. Again, looking at resources within the community to potentially connect young ones to the Juvenile Healing and Wellness Court. And, you know, hopefully those van operators are good runners in some instances as well.
Can I answer that one question up here regarding the community stuff? I'm just going to answer that real quick. What we did is just provide a community event. We don't call it a circle back event, Juvenile Healing and Wellness Court event. It's a community event, and everybody's welcome to it. That way you don't have to go through all the paperwork and everything for confidentiality and stuff like that. You're just like going to a Twins game, just like going to the store if you're in the van on the way there. It's just something in the community that everybody's there for. We don't single out our kids and keep them in a group or anything like that, but we do have enough people there to monitor them and keep an eye on them by far. One other thing was like the families involved. The families that come into the building have to sign a confidentiality agreement. If that confidentiality agreement's broken in any way, they are no longer able to come in and participate until, you know, we work something out and get understanding that they can't be talking about the stuff that goes on within the walls of our building.
Thank you for your all's insight. And I will say, as a prosecutor, I would really have appreciated a Healing to Wellness Court, because, you know, Dave, you probably wouldn't have liked me because you would have had 50 cases that would have been referring to you at once. But in terms of recidivism, you're right. If you can connect with those youth who maybe not have the most fortunate circumstances at home, yet you're able to get them into graduation, and then word spreads about the possibilities of the program, you know, that's going to lead to less police involvement in people's lives, less social services, less dispatch, all these resources that go into one case. I think the Juvenile Healing and Wellness Court, when successful, can really have a positive impact in terms of all those different departments that work together to try and help the people in need. And speaking of, so in terms of the actual program itself, you know, I want to hear on behalf of the participants. I think they'll get some good insight on what approaches you all take in terms of, you know, the intake and the assessment, and then the phases, if you use a phased approach to get youth from beginning to end, and then graduation, and then any sorts of aftercare program you have for them. We'll start with Chaniel.
Sorry, I was answering a question. Can you repeat the question?
Oh, so in terms of the case from beginning to end, what is your current approach look like? Are you using a phased system? And then, you know, what type of celebrations, or how do you celebrate graduation? And then if you have any aftercare programming, any suggestions for the participants?
Yeah, we have a phased system. So we actually have 5 phases. The first phase is just an orientation phase, 2 weeks orientation phase. And then our phases are kind of based, you know, like grade levels. So they build upon each other. I guess each phase you're gonna learn, you know, the beginning stages are like an orientation phase, an assessment phase. So you're kind of just more, the goals in that phase are to stabilize them, get them to understand the program requirements and outcomes, and then kind of help them make a informed decision on if this is the right fit for them. So that's what they go through in the beginning in the 2 weeks. And then the second phase is kind of their beginning level. So stabilizing them again and kind of building a foundation of trust with them. So that's the second phase. The goals in that phase are pretty much stabilization. So you're focusing on their needs and their higher level needs, like substance use disorder. And then third phase, you're kind of, you know, building upon those. And then you get to the last phase, which is kind of their learning phase. Kind of a sober living atmosphere is kind of the goal in that, maintaining sobriety. Those later phases are kind of like the end goal, preparation for aftercare. And then the aftercare is more, you're moving them towards self-regulation. So connecting them with resources in the community, like job readiness, you know, connecting them with their counselors if they want to continue care with them. And then, you know, we're kind of letting them get a sponsor, formulating healthy living goals and plans in that phase. So whatever they want to work toward after graduation is kind of what we follow up on. And then we do have a graduation ceremony. So at those ceremonies, we usually have their whole team, their family, the community gets invited if they have, if they feel like they want to have the kind of the public graduation. Most often it's, we invite our councilmen, our leadership, and then, you know, we'll do honor songs and a feed, and sometimes participants choose to get their, because a lot of them don't have their Indian name, so they'll get their Blackfeet name at that ceremony. So naming ceremonies happen, you know, and then it's kind of a big event. So that's their big end goal is the graduation ceremony. And then they'll get like all the charges, their legal incentives for the program are expungement of their records, you know, fines and fees might be forgiven, you know, a lot of they get certificates. Some of them might have been restored back to the so like the schools, if they might have been removed from a basketball team or something, that kind of stuff gets restored to at the completion of the program through the schools, that kind of thing. So
That's great, Chaniel. I know your handbook's got all the phases in it. If you're comfortable with us sharing the Blackfeet handbook to the participants, that would be great. Is that something?
yeah,
Not to put you
just
on the
keep in
spot,
mind
yeah.
we're in the process of we're actually amending those, so those are going to be we'll be having a new handbook and stuff coming out soon, but you're welcome to share that if you.
Thank you. Julio, what about the Quapaw program? Can you talk a little bit about if it's a phased approach, graduation, and then anticipated aftercare?
Sure. Yeah, we do have a phased program as well. We do have 5 phases. Our phase 1 is actually orientation and stabilization. So just an assessment of the participants, seeing what their needs are, stabilizing them essentially. Now we do have requirements to move on to the next phase. So once they are ready to move on to the next phase or think that they're eligible for the next phase, we do have set rules that they have to be in check with. So like, for example, no positive UAs for the last 21 consecutive days to move on to the next phase and things of that sort. So phase 2, 3, and 4 are actually just building upon each other and building up to phase 5, which is graduation of the Juvenile Healing to Wellness program. Now, when they are going into phase 5, there are requirements still. They still have to show that they can keep all the other phases still following those rules as well. And we do keep track of them after they have graduated. If we have someone that graduates at 17, we will keep track of them until they're at least 21. If they're 18 when they graduate, if they choose to, they can still stay utilizing some of our programs. For example, we just had someone who aged out of the program, but our youth services still will provide her with free counseling until she's 25, which she has opted to do. So collaborating with those other departments has been very important for us to keep track of aftercare as well.
Great. You can tell Anna's your TA provider, Julio. Dave, what about White Earth's program? What does it look like in terms of phases, graduation, and any potential aftercare?
We have like 2 different types of courts that we run. We run a trauma-informed court, which is completely cultural. In that court system, you have 4 phases that go with the seasons, and on each phase you learn different teachings, different things that pertains to that season, and they're used for like dealing with your trauma and stuff like that. Like in the first phase of that is explain the creation and migration story. You get your name and clan, you begin working on a giveaway bundle and explain why we smudge for like a coping skill and stuff like that. The giveaway bundles and stuff like that are for the staff that are helping, and also when they move from phases, instead of us gifting them, they have to gift the people who are helping them and go from there. One other thing that they do in that program is that we have a birch bark scroll. That's the way that we used to keep our history. So that's what we do with the kids when they come into that program. They have to, or they can start that birch bark scroll from the time that their trauma started until completion of the program. After the program's over, they can either take it during ceremony and put it in a fire and burn it, or they can keep that scroll with them and keep it going as they move on through life. The other court that we have is kind of it's a 4-phase program. You come into the first phases, there's certain goals that you have to meet. There's intensive supervision to where you're pretty much on house arrest for your first phase. After that, successfully complete that, you move to phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, and everything becomes less restrictive and until they move out to graduation. And then when we have the graduations and different things like that, we have honor songs right in the courtroom. We have different ceremonies, different things that we bring into the courtroom to kind of help the kid just celebrate and acknowledge their accomplishment. So I'm really looking forward now. We developed this trauma court just before COVID hit. And then when COVID hit, we got reduced a ton on our employees, and now we're getting back up to full staff. So we're really going to dive into this trauma informed court and have this become more of our mainstay and how we're going to work with the kids.
It's cool to hear you have 2 courts going simultaneously. I have a question about that approach. Is one recommended before another one, or have you had people utilize both courts or successfully complete both?
It's going to be determined on pretty much their mental health when they're coming into the program. If the kid goes through their diagnostic assessment, it shows that they are suffering from trauma, which about, I would say 90% of our kids are, then no, that's what's going to make the determination in which track that they move into. If a youth sees the other program and they like the other program, like if they're in the normal, I wouldn't say the normal track, but the original track, and they think that they'd benefit from our trauma informed track, then we can take and shift them over there and work with them through that too. So it'll kind of be a choice of the individual, and then we'll go off recommendations of that mental health DA and the other assessments that are done when they're coming into our program.
Nice. We got about 6 minutes left in our discussion here. So for this slide, I'll just say helpful resources for you all. New coordinators or communities who are thinking about or just getting a healing and wellness court started are Dave and Chaniel. There are TYRC mentors, so their contact information will be available. As you all can hear, they're doing a lot of great things within their respective communities. So we're going to encourage you to reach out to them. If you have questions, reach out to Anna or myself, and we'll connect you with them. Maybe get a site visit going. I know we've been in the works of having some of our newer grantees go do site visits in Blackfeet as well as White Earth. And then Anna is sharing the wellnesscourt.org is also your friend. Please visit our website for more resources as well as information about our fellow colleagues and their experience in the work that they're doing. If we can go on to the next slide, we'll close out with what you guys anticipate. And I think this is always an interesting topic, especially when it comes to healing the wellness court and having gone through the trial court setting and the adversarial approach. I noticed that the majority of the people I dealt with as defendants when I was prosecuting had substance abuse issues. And so, my mentality was basically, we've got to start looking at, being proactive instead of reactive, because as a prosecutor, there's nothing you can do about the incident that happened already. The only thing you can do is just react, right, to an incident that happened. You can speak with the victim, but with something like the Juvenile Healing and Wellness Court, that's where we start to get proactive. And I kind of am always curious, especially with the changes in jurisdiction and our relationships with the state and the counties. What do you all see the role of healing and wellness courts playing in the future? And how do you see them changing? And we'll start with Julio.
So the role of the Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court was something that I found very important. Now, with us having our tribal reservational boundaries reaffirmed, we have sole jurisdiction of all tribal juveniles within the reservational boundaries. So when we hired on a full-time prosecutor and public defender, they were going to work on revamping our children's code, which included our Indian child welfare, my position, position of the marshals, and in that code, I requested that the juvenile healing to wellness be tied into the code, so that way it's not something that can go away and is always an option, regardless if we have a grant to fund it or funding for it. It's always going to be an option. So that was the biggest thing to me to implement, was healing to wellness into the court, so that way, or into the code, I'm sorry, so that way we can keep it sustainable and keep it on the front of our mind, so that way we know to keep up with that program as well.
Dave, what about you? What's your vision of the future for healing and wellness courts and their impact within the community?
Well, I think with healing wellness courts, we got so many different ways that we can expand. One thing that we did is expand our courts in the prevention aspect too. We added a program called Duly Involved Youth Program, which is kind of like a spin-off of wellness court, where we use that for more prevention activities in the schools, trying to get more information out to the kids, younger kids. Because like I said before, we have kids that are 5, 6 years old smoking marijuana, and I've had kids as young as 12 and 13 that were trading sex for heroin and methamphetamine. So that's one thing I think our programs need to take a look at, is more of a prevention thing, working with different departments like mental health, chemical dependency, and trying to get to the kids when they're younger. I know we did a video back in the day called No More, I think it was, and we started out with preschool kids and talked about drugs and alcohol and the good touch, bad touch stuff, all the way down at those ages, and then to 2nd grade and 6th grade, and I think 8th grade and senior when they're leaving and going off to college. So I think that's our main thing, is just develop these wellness courts and the prevention aspect of things too.
Thank you, Dave. And Chaniel, I know you talked about education and that aftercare connecting. Do you see any evolving in terms of, providing those resources after graduation, or, where do you see your healing and wellness court expanding to help your youth?
I feel like our now that we have both the adult and the juvenile healing and wellness court, there's a really, there's a huge I guess the community's being aware that, the whole family needs to be treated. So I feel like the way our programs are going to continue, evolve eventually, it's going to end up being kind of like a, the parents will be in the adult healing and wellness court, juvenile will be in the, it'll be a family approach rather than just kind of like the separate court system, like a family, sort of like a family court. Family healing wellness court system. But I also feel like we might even expand, because we're also seeing state courts reaching out to us to help with their participants, people coming out of the prison systems, reconnecting families with each other. So those are areas, but I just feel like already the school system is seeing the value in working together with the court system. So I feel like they're also going to, I know they've already put us in a lot of their policies. So, we're part of their drug and alcohol policy. But I just feel like that's going to continue forward with, how we plan across systems in our community, connecting all 3 of these entities, treatment, court, the school system, all of those are gonna, we'll eventually start working together with the, there's a tribal action plan that's being put in place just seeing us all working together, I feel like that was a huge push too. So, you know, there's so many ways to expand. It's just, I feel like healing and wellness courts are going to become the new court model for tribes.
Thank you all. I think we can move ahead to the last slide. Just want to share my appreciation for Julio, Dave, and Chaniel and their willingness to participate and share, you know, their work within the community. You know, it sounds like you guys are doing some wonderful things. And as I stated, you know, we'll connect our participants with our guests to hopefully, you know, start to create some brainstorming sessions in the future. And of course, we'll be asking you all to help with future trainings and presentations as well. So thank you again. And I think we're going to do a exercise with Laura right now before we take a break for lunch.
Thanks, Jacob, and thanks everybody. First, just want to say if anyone just like needs to get up and get away from the computer right now, get to lunch, please do that. Don't feel like you have to stay. For those who are interested, we'll be doing another exercise. This will be just about 60 seconds once we get to it, so pretty quick, but just another short exercise to help regulate our nervous systems. And so yesterday we did a couple breathing techniques, and right now we'll be doing something called the basic exercise, which was developed by a Danish clinician, Stanley Rosenberg. And so I'll show you what it looks like first, and then we can all do it together. But what this quick exercise is doing is helping activate and regulate the vagus nerve, which is the biggest parasympathetic nerve in the body. And from what we talked about yesterday, the parasympathetic nervous system is what helps control our ability to relax, put in a really simple way. So the exercise, I'll show it now, and we'll do it together. So we'll put our hands behind our head, and then during this, keep the eyes looking straight forward. And first, just watch me, and then we can all do it. So keeping my head totally still, I'll take my eyes to look at my left elbow, which I think for you will show as the right. I'm just going to keep looking at the elbow until either I feel a deep breath, I yawn, or it just about takes 30 seconds. And then we come back to the middle and we'll do the other side. And so I know some people started doing it and some people were just listening. So we'll start over together. That was a good practice for anyone that was doing this already. So put your hands waist behind the head, feet flat on the floor, and then keeping the head totally still, look to your left elbow. Keep the face totally still. Just keep looking at the elbow. Just keep looking, keeping the head still. Nothing you have to do besides this. And if you feel a deep breath come on or a yawn, come back to the center. Otherwise, with your eyes. Otherwise, keep looking at that elbow. Just breathing naturally. If you're still looking at the elbow, come look back in the middle. And then we'll look to the right. Looking at the right elbow. You know, it's kind of tricky to get your eyes to look all the way there. Keep the face still. Looking at the right elbow. Just another breath here. And then we'll come look back in the center. Let the hands release. And that is it. So feel free to share if you noticed anything or not. You can write to me directly or just in the chat. But that's just a really quick thing. Everyone's bodies are different. So, you know, maybe you noticed something, maybe you didn't, but it's just a super quick little activity you can do during the day if you're just looking to sort of come back to center before wherever the day is leading you. So with that, hope everyone has an awesome lunch. If you're going to eat or just get outside if you can, go on a short walk, try to hydrate, and we'll see everyone back for our next session. And let me just kind of make sure I have the time for that next session right. Yep, so we are getting started at the hour. So that'll be 11 o'clock Alaska, 12 o'clock Pacific, 1 o'clock Mountain Time, 2 o'clock Central, and 3 o'clock Eastern. We will all meet back here for our next module. So thanks, everybody.